Welcome. My name is Peter Temp, aka Pete Bearder, and I'm here with the very fantastic Julia Novak. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
She is, in my opinion, which is a good opinion, one of the most important researchers and writers on spoken word performance poetry. Let me tell you why. A quick bit of biographical information on you. Julia is a researcher and a teacher of English literature and cultural studies at the University of Vienna, and has written a landmark book called Live Poetry, the full title being...
An Integrated Approach to Poetry in Performance.
An Integrated Approach to Poetry. Can you pass me my bag? Because I'm going to pull this book out, to show you my enthusiasm of exactly why this is such an important book. Here we go. Okay. Page, 234. Here we go.
You probably know it better than I do.
Could this be the most important 2 pages in the history of scholarship of performance poetry? This is a 2-page summary of what the book does, which is finding a language to adequately assess this art form that we all love, which, as we know, traditionally hasn't really been appreciated in ways in the academy, in ways that actually do justice to the genius of the discipline of performed verse. I encourage you to get yourself a copy. I've scrawled through this. I feel like I've wandered through your psyche. This is the bibliography. I've been writing notes all through it and reading much of what you have to say. So, Julia. So, okay, we're going to get to Julia in a minute. Don't worry, we're getting there. I have to say, this video is funded by the Arts Council. It's part of a meta-discussion for my coming book, which is called Poetry Renewal and the Spoken Word Renaissance, which is coming out soon. And yeah, it's being funded by the Arts Council. I'm being paid a small amount of money to bring this video to you, and it may be recorded for training and monitoring purposes. So, Julia, what would you like to see within the field of this growing field of research into the study of spoken word poetry, performance poetry?
Oh gosh, you'll have to stop me at some point. I think some important work is being done right now, and I'm so pleased to see that this is finally really, taking off, and many people seem interested. I think what is still lacking is a kind of something that researchers can gravitate to, like an infrastructure, like a journal, right, a society, a regular series of conferences and events, a website even that tries to focus academic work on spoken word poetry. So I think that would help a great deal if we could somehow draw people together, everybody who's doing work in the field. At the moment, I feel it's all very atomized, very sort of... people do little bits here, little bit there. Often they're not aware of each other's work, and there's just too little, focus, I suppose.
And there are a number of people right now at the UK who are also writing on this issue.
Exactly.
And it is an exciting time, I think, for the study of it. And I think your book has been a really valuable step forward in an area of study that has traditionally been massively understudied. When I got into spoken word many years ago, I was trying to find books that reflected my enthusiasm for this particular discipline. And all I was finding were books about poetry. Now, there is stuff out there, but you really have to dig. Mm-hmm. And I think now, I think would be good, because often you find sort of kind of renegade academics who have infiltrated the conversation and maybe submitted something to the oral tradition online journal, mm-hmm, but it's within a sea of stuff which is,
which is a corner of research that doesn't. Peter Middleton has published some of his work in oral traditions, and it doesn't really fit there if you look at the context and the other work there. So, and that's exactly what I mean, that what is missing is a venue, a dedicated venue of publication specifically for that kind of work, that gives it more of a presence, more of a visibility.
Spoken word studies would that qualify in your experience as an academic, as maybe a course in a university?
I think it would, though I would probably, my own vision would be more something like poetry performance studies, to not, because so many people, when they hear spoken word, they would probably exclude the work of somebody like Bob Cobbing or Peter Finch, the more avant-garde work. And I think it would be more interesting to sort of try and draw these two constituents together and see how they speak to each other. So I think spoken word research, for me, would be one very central branch within that larger field of poetry performance research.
Because performance poetry doesn't belong to spoken word. Spoken word isn't really a genre, arguably. It's a medium. And it's very possible for us to ghettoise ourselves into this very particular niche concept of live poetry. And this is one of the things you mentioned from the offset in your book, is that this is a book about live poetry, not about a particular scene of poetry.
Exactly, yeah.
This is a very broad thing.
Though, since publishing the book, I feel that actually it probably hasn't gone far enough, because what I looked at was also video recordings of live poetry, because obviously you need the recording to really engage very closely with a particular performance. But then there's people like Holly McNeish who use video to get their work out there, and the recording isn't incidental, so they use this other medium to reach out to their audience, and that isn't really covered by the term live poetry. So in that case, I think spoken word research would actually be very appropriate.
So that's an interesting area of discussion, isn't it? It's the fact that many poets now are publishing their work on collaborative, multimedia, viral settings. May or may not intend for it to be viral, but and there is that. I don't know if you read the article recently in the Poetry Review that was attacking some of these new poetics.
Yes. Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, on these new forms of poetry?
I didn't quite understand the gist of the article, to be honest. It seemed to be attacking these young, and again, particularly female poets, for being popular, which isn't something that I ever, I don't understand the argument.
In case you're watching this and you've not heard of it, this is a very controversial article recently released in early 2018 in the Poetry Review called "The Cult of Personality." And you could read it, but it wouldn't massively contribute to your understanding of this art form, although it would reveal some lingering prejudices relating to. I think it's kind of born out of this academic ideology of new criticism. Could you explain for our viewers what new criticism is and what legacy this still has in the way that we evaluate poetry?
New criticism. Early mid 20th century. Very much about the idea that a poem is a very intricate composition that is difficult to sort of pick apart, that is very much on the page, that needs to be studied closely. So we owe close reading strategies to new criticism, which I'm totally positive about. I think that's done a lot of good to poetry criticism, but very often it has been to the exclusion of external factors, and the presence of the poet, or even the intention of the poet was completely disregarded. And I think the old new critics would would hate the idea of the author performing their own poem, because what you have there is a kind of privileged interpretation, I suppose, because people will assume, okay, this is the person who wrote the poem, so they know what it means, and they are the best interpreter of their own work. And as new critics were focusing so exclusively on the text and not on the moment of its composition or performance, I think they would, yeah.
Often the language that's used to describe contemporary performance poetry is almost kind of quasi-mystical terminology of this kind of matrix, this multi-dimensional placement of the poet in time and place. Mm-hmm. And it's quite a hard thing to really assess, isn't it? Because it's time, place, moment, energy in the room, people present, quantity of people. You could even look at electromagnetic fields and the smell that people are giving off. Even people are talking about now, aren't they?
The thing is, though, I mean, the idea that context matters a great deal in performance isn't new exactly. Because think about theatre studies; they've been running into the same difficulties for ages and ages. So this is just something that literary scholars have to get their head round and start to engage with. It's not, it's not a new phenomenon. And
is that changing in the academy, do you think? I know that you're in the University of Vienna, but you have experience of being an academic over here too. What signs are you seeing that the discussion is changing? What might you predict for the future?
What signs am I seeing? Well, as you mentioned, there are a number of books on the way now that I'm eagerly awaiting, actually. So there are a number of PhDs being written at the moment or completed. And that shows that, professors are ready and willing to engage with that kind of work and to supervise it. It means that it's now apparently seen as a viable, field of study. And what I'm hoping is that we'll get much more of that. That this moment will really create enough impetus for the field to develop into a recognised branch of literary studies.
Great. And what particularly would you like people to be researching? Is there any holes that you think really could be explored by research?
Lots. What is still lacking, I think, for instance, is a history of the poetry slam in the UK. And I know that's only one, very particular subfield of spoken word, but there's nobody has really engaged with this before. I also think if you look at the proliferation of spoken word theatre in the past 10 or so years, maybe since the turn of the millennium, again, that is a field that that somebody should study as in its entirety and in context. I think that a lot of work needs to be done there. So many things. I think there's a lot of potential for researchers interested in spoken word.
Talking to other researchers and people who are writing on this subject, the temptation is just to write about everything, because everything you start to research, you very quickly realise hasn't been touched.
I know the role of digital platforms such as YouTube in the publication of spoken word. Again, that's I think that would be a vital question to try and answer. And
it's changing every year. Now, people are uploading not so much to YouTube; they're uploading to Facebook, aren't they? And that comes with its own context. The medium is the message, as Marshall McLuhan famously said. When it's coming through a stream on a Facebook feed, surrounded by advertising and lots of other distractions, and it's coming to you silent, but it has the text subtitles, and these are new ways that poetry is interfacing with the human psyche. Actually, it's actually quite exciting frontier of research, isn't it? Okay, so lots to get your teeth into there if you're interested in this. This is something I've been dedicating my life to more concertedly now for a couple of years, and it is absolutely fascinating. And I encourage you, if you're listening to this, to learn more about it. Go out, research it yourself. This is changing the discussion on poetry, it's changing the discussion on English literature and how that's taught, and frankly, it's changing the world, because that is the role of the poet, in my opinion, which again is a good opinion, and so are those of Julia Novak. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have got you here on the few days you're over here from Vienna, and no doubt you'll be back and be continuing to be part of this growing community, and maybe next time we meet it'll be at a conference. Maybe if you're listening to this, you should organise a conference or a journal, or just start up a university and give all of your staff a decent pension, because they're out there on the streets now with drums and poets and bad ideas, and they're making good of those ideas. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you so much. I know you've got a plane to catch, so we're going to let you go. Thank you for listening. Again, this is research and a discussion for my book, Poetry Renewal and the Spoken Word Renaissance. And if you're interested in these things, I recommend you get yourself a copy, as well as a copy of this book here by Julia. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Thank you.